All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us here for the next edition of Moving Beyond the Coronavirus Economy series. And this has become a staple for us every month. We've been going over current franchise sales and marketing trends and really taking a look at macroeconomic indicators for us, small business startup and small business indicators, and then trying to make some sense of how all of this applies to what is going on and what is occurring in the um, uh, franchise sales and marketing arena and everything that's happening there. So, with that being said, I would love to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the process. Is I'm just going to share my screen. Maybe I will. Hold on one second. Let's see here. We're going to start off with some macroeconomic data points and just take a look and see at what all is happening here. Hold on one second. Let's see, as we've got a couple folks loading in here. All right. So here is the first chart that we like to begin with. Okay, so we always like to start, and I should say I always like to start with what is going on with the Purchasing Managers Index for manufacturing. This is a leading indicator. It's extremely helpful to give us a snapshot of what's going on with manufacturing just in general. It's going to tell us what's happening. So it says here, this is from the most current report. This is for the month of October. And it says manufacturing grew in October as the manufacturing PMI registered 60.8%, 0.3 percentage points lower than the September reading of 61.1%. The manufacturing PMI continued to indicate strong sector expansion in U.S. economic growth in October. All of the 6 big manufacturing industries expanded in the following order: food, beverage, and tobacco products, computer and electronic products, chemical products, fabricated metals products, petroleum and coal products, and transportation equipment. So what does that mean? That means all the major sectors and industries are purchasing. Anything that's above this 50% number here indicates that the manufacturing economy is growing, anything above that. So you can see how high this number is that's going on here. That's a really, really great indicator. And it's typically a leading indicator, meaning we might be looking 6 to 24, maybe 36 months out that this is going to be showing an impact. So it's happening right now. We can have some pretty strong confidence. We're going to see this continue for the next 6 to maybe 36 months, depending on how that registers. So just some great data and information. All right, now let's go ahead and jump into the services sector. So this is from the month of October as well. And it says services PMI, which is the Purchasing Managers Index, is at 66.7%. So in October, the PMI registered 66.7%, a 4.8% increase compared to September figure of 61.9%. This is the highest reading since the inception of the index in 2008. So the 12-month average is 61.1%, which reflects a strong demand in the services sector. This reading indicates the services sector grew for the 17th consecutive month after 2 months of contraction and 122 months of growth prior to the 2 contracting months. So what this is saying, in 13 years of having this report out, excuse me, this is the highest number it's ever reported. That's a huge news. It's really, really great indication for what's going on, what's happening, where things are progressing, how things are going here. So 66.7%, highest reading for the Services Purchasing Managers Index report in 13 years. And 13 years ago, we had, if you're looking at that 2008 time period, we were coming out of or going through, soon to be coming out of a recession at that point. And so you would have thought maybe record was set in 09, 2010, and so on. So anyway, good sign. Now let's jump into the hospital purchasing managers index report, and that's at 63.4%. And it says the hospital PMI registered 63.4% in October, increasing 2.8 percentage points from September reading of 60.6%, indicating a 17th consecutive month of growth. This is the highest reading since August 2020. The business activity index increased slightly from September. The new orders index increased in October compared to September. The employment index remained in contraction with a minimal increase in October compared to September. So it looks like employment index is contracting. Let's take a look at this. Here it is. Here's the employment one. So you can see that this is contracting here, heading down. So that's interesting to see that's happening. So, but in general, all things here are pointing in positive direction. So why does this matter for you talking to prospective franchise candidates or things to know about? Well, number one, there's maybe a renewed or a vigor in the air, a positive attitude and a confidence in the air that maybe can't be explained. This is one thing to talk about. If a candidate maybe expresses to you, well, I don't know if this is the right time. I'm a little nervous still. I'm unsure what's happening. Well, you can use these as some broad economic indicators to show, look, this is the things are recovering here. Things are coming back. They're bouncing back and looking to progress and continue in that way for the foreseeable future. Obviously, you can't predict the future, but these are indicators to help show us what's going on. Now, to look at some maybe concerning news that might come up here is the inflation rate. And this is from the usinflationcalculator.com. I just pulled this website up really quickly because it shows us what is happening the last 12 months. I'm trying to get this up here for annual inflation rates. So you can see the annual inflation rates over the last 10 or 11 years here. So 2011 was the highest previously. So 10 years or 11 years ago, it was 3%. And then it maintained pretty low inflation rates here. And now here we are at 2021, and it's currently at 6.2%, which is a high number. And so certainly it's got people concerned because now if you're in a job and you're getting your standard, let's say, 1 to 3% pay increase that might be coming out, as an employee, you're actually losing money if you're a W-2. So if you're talking to people in that are thinking about going into business for themselves, one way to view this and to talk to them about it is to say, well, as an employee, your wages, in most cases, do not keep up maybe necessarily when these high inflationary periods occur. Maybe that 1 to 3% was keeping up over the previous 10 years, but now 6.2% growth and inflation projected to continue for the next, from what I gather, maybe 6 months, 12 months at a pretty heavy pace. When you go into business for yourself, your pricing and your program are going to continue and grow with inflation. So your services, while your costs may increase, your pricing should increase to offset that as well. So you're able to keep you can talk to them about how they're able to kind of keep up with inflation due to price increases that they would have to incur to keep up with things. So that's something just to keep into consideration there as you're talking about inflation and what's going on there and prices and what's happening. This is a new report, by the way. We've never talked about this one. This is business formation statistics provided by the United States Census Bureau. This is a brand new report. It just came out November 10th. Brand new, I should say. It's an updated report as of November 10th to show new business startups or new monthly business applications. And this is an aggregate of a bunch of sources that the U.S. Census Bureau puts together from each state across the country. And so this is showing back in 2005 on the far left here. And then you go all the way to this most recent line is October of 2021. Now, what's interesting here is you can see that last month, there were approximately 420,000 new business applications that were submitted. Compare that to prior to the pandemic here, it was right around 300,000. So we're talking potentially a 40% increase in new business applications just last month compared to a high month before the pandemic hit. So look at this surge here back in, this would have been 2020, maybe August, September. I don't have, it's hard to tell by the month, but over 500,000 applicants. And look at this. You can see what's going on. A lot of new business activities happening. And so what does that mean if you're thinking about buying a bit or buying a franchise, or maybe if you're talking to prospective franchisees? Number one, a lot of people are recognizing, hey, now is that time. Now is it time for me to do something. Number two, if you're a franchise development professional, this confirms there is activity happening. It is bubbling. It is boiled over. It's the most activity that's ever been seen since 2005. We're talking 16 years, and the activity is significantly greater. So keep that in mind as new businesses are coming and starting. And remember, not all of these are franchises. A lot of these are independents that are going to open up. And so one of the benefits of buying into a franchise versus a traditional startup is that you do get a proven system that should help the franchisee launch and start faster, to give that extra advantage for the franchisee coming into the system. So keep that in mind, which means that if a traditional startup maybe takes 3 to 6 months to get going or set up, a franchisee should hopefully accelerate. And if you're comparing one independent startup versus a franchise, the goal would be that the franchise is going to start faster, avoid more frequent missteps, and have an overall package and starting program ready to go more quickly. So these are some talking points for you to be sharing with your franchisees. So really, really cool data, really cool report. Now let's talk about, we're going to move into the franchiseinsights.com website and talk through some data points that they found. So they have an article they recently published called The Franchise Lead Generation Demand Gap and What It Means. And so this was published November 11th, 2021. And it says, are you seeing more competition for the best franchise prospects, or finding it harder to identify the number of prospects you need to achieve your franchise development goals? Are you experiencing soaring franchise lead costs in filling your pipeline? The flow of aspiring business owners took the biggest hit in the history of lead generation in March and April of 2020, right, as all the lockdowns and shutdowns started happening, as work from home orders and business closings gripped the affected countries. While the demand for qualified prospects has all but reached a February 2020 pre-pandemic level, the flow of interested applicants on average lags behind, as seen in the monthly chart above. On top of that, Google and Apple are making it harder through well-intentioned privacy measures, which have the impact of limiting the supply of prospects, reducing your ability to precisely measure return on investment for a source like Facebook, and potentially extinguishing your ability to target applicants who visit your FranDev website. The number of active contracts of franchise ventures compared to the actual number in February 2020 is a proxy for the franchise development prospect demand. Actual monthly franchise inquiries are used similarly as an empirical measurement of franchise demand. So we can see here, look at this chart below, is a plot of the difference between demand and supply, and the growing supply-demand gap. The message is that there are many good franchise opportunities to choose from, and FranDev teams have to work harder to achieve the same results in times when this gap is higher. So higher meaning it's taller up on the chart. Historically, over decades, we have seen this seasonally, but the pandemic response was an overwhelming factor over the last few years. So anyway, as you can see, the higher this number goes, the more the competition is for those same leads that are out there. So not something that you're probably not already aware of, but just to see some numbers and things talking about it there. All right. This was a cool benchmarking survey that the Franchise Insights ran a survey. And on November 17th, they published this, which was Wednesday. So 2 days ago, they published this. And it says almost 2/3, which is 64.9% of active U.S. franchisors surveyed by Franchise Insights in November 2021 reported no changes to their fees in 2021. Exactly 1/3 increased fees in 2021, and a small percentage, 1.75%, actually reduced their franchise fees. More franchises increased their fees by more than 50%, than reduced them. So what's interesting to note here is you see these franchise fees of those companies that did increase the franchise fees, the highest, more companies increased by 50% than reduced them. So that's an interesting just data point to pull out, that of the folks that had some change up or down, a 50% increase or more in the franchise fee happened in a higher percentage of companies than that actually reduced their franchise fee. But to me, the telling sign here is that roughly 2/3 of franchisors did not change their fees, and approximately 1/3 of franchisors did increase their fees. So just a thing to point out there. Wherever you fall in that spectrum and this preliminary data that they're running, we'll see where it stands. But what seems to be kind of the majority have stayed the same, which I'm not terribly surprised, having been in franchising for a long time. Franchise fees don't seem to change very frequently. So just an interesting stat to point out. Now, we have the Great Resignation is underway. Record percentage of aspiring business owners are leaving full-time jobs. So this is really interesting. So over 2/3 of entrepreneurs who agree or strongly agree that now is a good time to start a business in October of 2021, down from September's high of 73.4%. Aspiring owners who anticipate starting their businesses in the next month dropped to 16.2% in October of 2021, in contrast to the record the prior month of 36.1%. So September had a record month of prospects that were saying, right now is the right time for me to start a business, a new company, that I'm going to do it right now or this month. And it reduced down in October. So I think that's interesting. And if you see here on these colored bars, 58.6%, this light blue bar, full-time employees that are considering starting a business. So 58.6% are considering that, which is the highest number since February of 2020. It's the highest number in a year and a half here. So 9.7% are part-time. So if you add those together, you're looking at about 68% or so. Almost 70% are either full-time or part-time employed that are seeking out or considering owning a business. So as a franchise development and marketing professional, that means that people are thinking about the prospects that are inquiring most likely are employees, and they are most likely full-time employees, second likely to be part-time employees, or about 1 out of every 5 leads, 20% of them are current business owners that maybe are looking to add you into their mix of maybe their investments that they're invested in. So just something for you to be thinking about and talking about and be aware of when you're talking to prospects, because if you know that about 68%, 2/3 of the people you're talking to are employees, well, you need to be aware of that and be talking that language to them and find that out. All right. So franchise fees are likely to rise in 2022 if the September 2021 CPI is any indicator. So here's kind of an interesting thing. Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, all items in U.S. average. So you see this average here. So the Consumer Price Index rose 5.4% in September 2021 compared to September 2020. And in categories like used cars and trucks soaring 24.4% and energy climbing 24.8% on average in U.S. urban areas. High prices for homes inspired a 4-decade low in consumer perceptions of a good time to buy a home. And the expenses that fuel franchise growth, leadership, talent, labor, raw materials, equipment show escalating prices by the transitory or long term. For franchise sales, lead gen costs have increased. So we've covered some of this information here, but just another data point to share and talk through. This is an interesting report. This is one of my favorites that we go over. This is the Small Business Startup Sentiment Index put together by the folks at franchiseinsights.com. And this was dated November 3rd, the most current version available. And I'll just point out some key numbers that we haven't talked about. So in the month of October, a record 83.1% see business conditions the same or getting better. So 83.1%, that's a record for this report. And that's means, so 83.1%. So that means that I think it's the same or getting better. And just 16.9% think it's worse or much worse. So just things for you to keep in mind. What I mentioned before about kind of that sentiment, the confidence, the vigor that someone might be feeling, this is being reflected in these data points here. All right, I'm going to scroll down on the report a little bit, and I want to talk about, where is it? Here it is. Okay, which of these factors will have the biggest impact on the next 6 months of your decision to start a business? So the black line on the far right of all of these rainbow colors here in each chart, the black line is the most current month, which would be October. So if we look at October here, it shows that the number one, by far, it's not even close, it's more than double the second closest percentage. Which factors will have the biggest impact in the next 6 months on your decision to start a business? Funding or access to credit, number one. Number two is, that's at 71.5%, by the way, funding or access to credit. 71.5% of the respondents said that. 34% of them said the economic climate. And if you're listening in and not viewing the chart here, if you by month for the economic climate, you can see it's kind of been trending downward. It's been trending on a diagonal, slanting from left to right, heading downward is a pretty consistent trend. There have been some ups and downs, but you can see that trend line really forming there, which means that people are becoming less and less concerned about the economic climate, that they're getting more comfortable with how things are going. So your number one is funding and access to credit. Number two is economic climate. And number three highest is other. So your guess is as good as mine for what other might include. But I think that this is a really worthwhile and interesting chart to be talking about. All right. And how does COVID-19 affect your interest in business ownership? I think this is just interesting for franchise development professionals. So if we take a look here, October is kind of in this pink colored bar here. The highest percentage, 37.4%, is that it boosts my interest in controlling my own destiny through business ownership. And then the second highest rating is 23%, is that it makes me favor businesses that would be resistant to this kind of thing. So the messaging that you can take out of this for the two highest number or scorers here is it boosts your interest in controlling your own destiny and business ownership. So your messaging, it's not that unique to franchising and franchise marketing, which is, I want to take control of, be the captain of my own ship, take control of my own destiny, make sure you're communicating that and referencing and reminding prospects of that when you're talking to them on the phone. Number two is that it makes me favor businesses that would be resistant to this kind of thing. So if your business provides some sort of resistance or maybe did well during the pandemic and lockdowns and shutdowns and such, you better be talking about it and talk about the things that you did and how your business did well or thrived during that time period. If your business was impacted, you should be talking about measures you've put in place to help minimize or circumvent significant impacts from maybe a related situation in the past. So you don't have to, you don't want to, you always want to be straightforward and direct and honest with these folks. But you can also share and say, well, we didn't do that. We were impacted, and here's what we learned, and here's what we've implemented and put in place to help mitigate or minimize these things from happening in the future. So I thought that was a great report. Lastly here, I need to pull up the chart just while we're talking about COVID. Let me pull up trends in cases. Let me just pull up the total trends for what's happening right now. Okay. Sorry, this is, here we go. Cases, deaths. Well, maybe it's not going to pull up here, guys. I'm sorry, this is not pulling up very clear. Let me go to one other source because for whatever reason, the CDC site is, there are a lot of things that I can click on and it's not very clear. So I'm going to go to worldometers.info and go to the coronavirus section, and I'm going to click on the US section here. I'm going to zoom in so I can maybe skip some of these ads here so you don't have to look at I don't know, whatever they're selling. It looks like a Christmas sweater with the Grinch on it. So this is the current 7-day average of the current 7-day trend. This blue line is a 7-day running trend of cases in the United States. This is on Worldometers US, daily new cases in the US. I zoomed in quite a bit on this here, but you can kind of see, look, as this continues to progress, one thing that appears to be consistent is it's really starting to look like it's seasonal. It's going to have some seasonality to it once or twice a year. We're going to have these spikes, ups and downs of this going through things. And then we'll go down here. I'm going to look at daily deaths and just showcase and take a look and see what that looks like. Here's, not 3-day. I want the 7-day. And you can see the nice thing is with the 7-day moving average for deaths, we had the spike, and here it is coming down here and on a very nice trending decline on things. So just to showcase that. And as a fun fact to close out today, I should have opened with this, but I thought this was so fun. And the chart or the data that I want to talk about today is where did it go? What is the most commonly misspelled brand in the world? The most commonly misspelled brand. The average number of times that the following brands are misspelled. What's the most common brand? Any guess for these large multinational brands? All right. Well, I will share my screen. Here we go. All right. So I thought this was kind of fun. This is from Statista or Statista.com, Statista. This was published today, the November 19th. And the most commonly misspelled word or company brand is Hyundai. The second most is Lamborghini. Third is Ferrari. Fourth is Hennessy. Fifth is Heineken. Sixth is Gillette. Seventh is Suzuki. And eighth is Haagen-Dazs. And that's pretty amazing. Haagen-Dazs is eighth. That's a pretty tough one with the 2 A's and a ZS at the end. So anyway, thank you all. I'd like to open up to see if there are any questions here before we close out. Any questions from the attendees before we go? Feel free to raise your hand or type a question in the chat box or just message directly here real quick. All right. Well, I'm not seeing anything come through. So I would like to thank all of you for tuning in and attending this edition of Navigating the Coronavirus Economy series. If you have not subscribed to our podcast, Multiply Your Success, please take a look at that. Multiply Your Success podcast, and available in Apple iTunes, Spotify, Audible, any of your favorite podcast listening services. And we will also have this live and post it up for a replay here within the next few days, available on our website as well at bigskyfranchiseteam.com. Thanks for being here. Have a great weekend, everyone.